Hello, ESPC community members. This is Christian Buckley, Microsoft MVP and RD over here at AvePoint, and I'm talking today with Microsoft's Chris McNulty. Sorry, there's no like echoey sound of the voice for the intro, but we're going to talk today about where to start with Microsoft Viva. Hello, Chris.
Hello. Just slow down for a minute, Christian. Your ESPC is full of adventure, but you're going a mile a minute. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. The feet kind of hurt. The weather's good. All right, we're ready to go, right?
We're ready.
All right. So let's start with the obvious question here. So what is Microsoft Viva?
I'm glad you asked me that. So as many of you have probably seen, we announced Microsoft Viva last February at a virtual event that was keynoted by Satya Nadella. Viva can be lots of things to lots of people. And it's really born out of our experience over the past year and a half, and in some ways the past 4 years, about looking at how we use AI around content and around SharePoint to drive new experiences for content management, for knowledge, and for employee experience and well-being. One of the things that I've observed talking to members of the community, to customers, even to people at Microsoft, is it is a little bit like the old parable of the blind man and the elephant, because Microsoft Viva is very broad in its scope and ambitions. It's really taking a look at the ways that the workforce and work patterns have shifted over the past year and a half, even longer, and will continue to. And how do we respond to that with a set of tools to just give people a better digital workplace, a better experience that's focused on their well-being? And so there are 4 modules initially for Viva, and there will be others, and they focus on culture and communications, that's Viva Connections, on workforce measurement, coaching and well-being, that's Viva Insights, AI-driven knowledge generation, that's Viva Topics, and integrated intelligent learning catalogs, that's Viva Learning. Some people hear what is most familiar to them. So they'll say, Viva's a learning platform, or Viva's your new portal, or Viva is Project Cortex. And so people arrive at it from all sorts of different places, and that's all fine. People are on different journeys. But for us, Viva is all of those experiences and more. Viva is both an application and something that you add to Teams, as well as being a platform. It is, as they said on SNL once, floor wax and a dessert topping.
Well, it's so funny that I was just kind of smiling as you started. We talked for so many years about trying to move away from the idea of, back in the SharePoint days, of SharePoint as this Swiss Army knife that's all these things, and focus on the core things that it was good at. Now here we are talking about, the Swiss Army knife. It's not really, but of Viva. But you're right. The way that I interpret it is there's collaboration technology, and of course all the components, all the things that surround that. We get so focused in the work that needs to be done, we often don't take the time to understand what are the impacts of that work. What is the right way to do that? What are we learning from that? How do we better surface and use what we have in place? How can we improve on those things?
I've described Viva sometimes as being sort of like Teams++, since most of those experiences are being delivered through Teams, but they are optional series of add-ons. You don't need to buy all of them. You may select some of them based on where you are and where your journey is. So we want there to be flexibility, but it's also tied to kind of the underlying M365 Teams platform, SharePoint framework. It's also, in some ways, it is SharePoint++, because SharePoint is instrumental to how connections work, especially as well as topics and learning. So if you've been on the journey with Microsoft 365 for a while, we think you like where it's going. And it has applicability to you, whether you're a user of apps or a developer of apps, or you work in integration. But it's much more focused on that overall quality of experience, as well as integrating other things, whether they're from Microsoft or other partners. It's very much a piece of the ecosystem. So it's broad, but at least I think I've given kind of the quadrant of the Microsoft universe where it lives.
Well, now that we understand the scope of it, I guess question number two would be really something I hear a lot. In fact, we had a presentation on Viva last night at our user group here in Utah about where do people begin? So where do you have point people to go and get started with Viva?
Where do people begin? Well, my parents explained this to me once. No, um, what we've seen.
When a developer and a business user love each other, and then okay.
It is a fantastic question. It's one that I am learning a lot from all of the customer meetings. I've had 2 customer meetings on Viva already today. And I mentioned before, people arrive at Viva from lots of places, whether it's through partner integrations or the different modules. But I really see it coalescing down into one of 2 likely paths. So Viva Connections, which integrates SharePoint, Yammer, Stream into Teams to be able to create that connected culture, is included in most Microsoft 365 plans at no additional charge. So sometimes just for the economics or the fact that companies already have an investment, Viva Connections can be a logical place for them to get started. If they already have a modern SharePoint intranet, Viva Connections gets you into Viva. And as Viva Connections is going to acquire different capabilities throughout the year, adding the dashboard, adding the mobile applications to it, you're going to be positioned to be able to integrate all of those things into the flow of work. And from there, we see customers typically then moving kind of one aisle over to Viva Topics, which is also heavily centered on SharePoint, and then progressing to Learning and then Insights. That's one path that we see that customer journey moving down. The other path where we see customers beginning is actually with Viva Insights, especially for more mature organizations that have a data-based approach to their decision-making. Because Viva Insights helps you establish that well-being, employee-centric culture with baselining it, being able to measure, we think we have good work-life balance. Do we actually have it? Or are people typically extending their work days 5-6 hours just to keep up with things? So being able to take a data-driven approach to assessing well-being and workplace practices is an important starting point. Along with the analytics that it brings and the coaching that it brings, there's immediate benefits to being able to drive richer relationships for people in the emerging hybrid work environment we find ourselves. And typically what we see, those Insights customers tend to be very top level driven. Like we're really trying to improve our decision making culture or employee retention. They see those things very much in HR terms. And so those natural discussions then proceed kind of almost in reverse sequence to say, well, let's talk about how we put the right learnings out in front of people. So Viva Learnings is the next module. And then learning is closely adjacent to knowledge with topics, and then connections coming in at the end. So we see customers approaching it from most of those paths. And I will tell you that we have some customer conversations where customers will look at Viva and say, I love all of this except for that. Like I already have a portal solution I'm comfortable with, or we've made investments in learning and we're not going to displace those. And that's fine. There's a role for all of that broad ecosystem, but I've yet to meet a customer who's not interested in any of it at all.
Right. Well, agreed. I was just going to add in too that so I interviewed one of the early preview or pilot customers out of the UK and about how they were using Viva and where they saw it, and they said we talked about how hard it is to sometimes to measure the qualitative improvements. They're trying to improve what it's like to work within their organization. And now that they have better insights into that, when they go and they make changes and try things, they can more readily see what's actually happening, what the actual impacts are, and then go and get that direct feedback. And they're having more conversations around that, which is great.
So which customer are you talking to?
A certain one with an MVP at the lead who's been part of the program since the beginning.
Yeah, Simon's been great. And it's part of, we've been customer focused. And for those of you who know, like Microsoft is MVP focused as well. They don't always put the focus on the right MVPs, because if they've been paying attention to me as an MVP, they would have known they never should have hired me. But yeah, it's great to be able to like get that real world customer experience and guidance, and I love having those voices as part of our community. I wish we were there in person to be participating in the community this year. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, that'll be a reality.
I hope so too. Well, question 3, Chris. So you talked about changes that are happening in the workplace, and Microsoft has been writing a lot about hybrid specifically. So what is happening with the hybrid workplace? So what can we expect from Microsoft Viva in the next year or so?
Um, I think you should think a little bit more broadly about what is the nature of hybrid work. It's worth reflecting back. There's an open debate as to how long the hybrid period will even last. Is it permanent? Is it transitional? And there are some signals on either side of that line. But keep in mind, in a hybrid workforce, some people are working remotely. Some are going to be co-located at a physical location, which I believe is called an office. Um,
Heard that,
and
yes.
other people will be in these um, mobile devices that with wheels that they use to go from one place to another. I read about this online somewhere. People used to commute, I guess they called it. But the combination of first line, home, and office workers is going to be a very interesting one. We think that it will lead to lots of cultural changes. How do you make sure meetings, for instance, are inclusive? For example, one thing we've been talking about. We've all been to kind of back in the old days. You show up for a meeting in a room with people, and there's a couple of people remote. Everyone in the room introduces themselves, and there's sort of a token, anyone on the line who wants to say something? And when that mix is shifted, we may have to put the emphasis on let's get everyone online to introduce themselves and talk, and then finally make sure that we check in with the people in the room because you want there to be a quality of experience. We kind of see that in from a product perspective as well. As people are going to be dealing with different bandwidths and different shaped devices, making sure that there is an equivalent high quality experience for them, regardless of whether you're on a 27-inch screen with great bandwidth, taking a look at a connection site, or you're looking at it on one of these. Um, that's, I think, hybrid is going to be interesting. I think personally, we will see hybrid work persist. I do think, hopefully, that it becomes more normalized for people to return to workplaces, but I think hybrid is going to persist in the same way we were talking before about coming to ESPC. We've been talking internally at Microsoft about conferences. Like, we love the big physical events, and they are hard. And over the past year plus, we've been doing these big virtual events, and they're hard in different ways. Let's do pre-recordings and have live video production for everything. There's going to be this fascinating period for a couple of years where we're going to say, let's do hybrid events simultaneously, doing something for hundreds of people in the room and orchestrating a live multi-channel video broadcast of the same. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch that play out. And that's just one aspect of what hybrid work is going to look like. Obviously, based on your industry, the nature of things like healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, all have been transformed during the pandemic. And hybrid is going to have impacts there that we can't completely forecast, other than to say that the impact will be significant.
I tend to agree with you. I think that there's, we'll see. Obviously, we'll see. But I think that people have took a bit of the red pill. It will take some time for that to adjust. But I think that people got a taste for that, and I think have a better appreciation for, at the very least, people that are not in their physical location and how to make sure that it is inclusive, that people are connected. And so I think that there's going to be an intentional effort to make sure that continues, no matter what percentage of people are back in the physical office, if at all. But Chris, really appreciate your time today. Wish this could be in person, but of course, we'll see you hopefully later this fall at one of the other events.
Yeah, it's been 15 months, and as you you and I have said to each other for a long time, I'm still here.
Still
Still
here.
here.
Still here.
Still here.
But thanks for everybody for watching, and thanks, Chris, and enjoy the
Thanks,
rest
everyone.
of ESPC.